Yo, what is up guys? It is esports content entertainment coming at you guys with another video here today. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing my LCS 2023 Spring Split Week 7 recap. So I know a lot of you guys liked my last week video where I did my LCS 2023 Spring Split Week 6 recap. And I told you guys this was going to be the consistent content you would get throughout the regular season and the playoffs regarding the LCS and the LEC. Because I was constantly thinking about, what kind of consistent content can I actually put out for you guys, where the only other content you would get outside of the Cloud9 podcast would normally be me just covering if a player would get swapped out for another player, mid-season during the LCS and LEC, regular season and or playoffs for any other given split of a year, actually. So I thought to myself, you know what, let's just bring back the weekly recaps for the LCS and the LEC. And yes, I will be doing my LEC 2023 Spring Split Week 1 recap. I just have to finish up watching up more of the games, and then I will give you guys that video in just a day or two. So I also had to get this video done a bit earlier this week because, as you guys know, with the new LCS format for this year, Week 1 and Week 8 are going to be Super Weeks, right? So tomorrow, the Super Week begins with one of the match of the weeks, that being FlyQuest versus Cloud9, and also another big marquee matchup for playoffs, and basically just is this team going to actually make playoffs? Is TSM versus 100 Thieves. Those are the two main marquee matchups of tomorrow. For starters, 100 Thieves, if they get the head-to-head over TSM, because they already beat TSM previously earlier in the split, they also have the head-to-head over Team Liquid, as they do not have the head-to-head over CLG. So if 100 Thieves can manage to win out against TSM and also win either against Evil Geniuses or they win against IMT, they are pretty much secured going into playoffs. But it all pretty much also depends on, TSM beating them and or TSM going undefeated in this Super Week as well. Now, the thing that we're going to get to in a little bit is regarding Team Liquid, actually. So people have asked, can Team Liquid also make playoffs as well? So I'll get to playoff implications right now and then start going over my thoughts of what happened in the gameplay for this past week of the LCS 2023 Spring Split. So right now you have three teams tied right now at 7 and 8, that being 100 Thieves, CLG, and TSM. The biggest thing to take away from this week is that 100 Thieves needed a 2-0 to get themselves in the running with TSM and CLG. Remember this, they do not have to compete with Team Liquid this time around, because they already 2-0'd Team Liquid in this spring split for the LCS in 2023. That means there is no tiebreakers that will need to be played between these two teams. Now, they already lost to CLG twice already, so they do not have a head-to-head tiebreaker against CLG. That means the only other team that you can essentially get that through is with TSM. Now, they already defeated TSM earlier in the split, which is actually a good thing. So the pressure is actually on TSM to beat 100 Thieves right now. So that's where it's actually coming through. The reason why Team Liquid, it's actually worse for them is because they're already at 6 and 9. The best way for Team Liquid to even hope of even getting into playoffs is actually going 3-0. You have to go at least 3-0, because if you're already at 10 losses, you're pretty much not getting in. I know people like to do their little scenarios of like, oh, no, it won't matter. If you get to 10 losses, you are not making it, okay? Then they also have to bank on other teams losing more matches than they win. So that means you have to bank on 100 Thieves, CLG, and TSM all going at least 1 and 2, okay? That is pretty much the only realistic scenario that Team Liquid actually makes playoffs. Team Liquid has looked pretty bad throughout most of the split anyway, so them making playoffs is pretty much not going to mean anything anyway when they're going to go playoffs, get lowest seed, and get knocked out in the first round anyway, right? Because remember, top 4 secure the upper bracket, right? If you're anything less than 4th, you are in the lower bracket, okay? And remember, for the spring splits for the LCS, top 6 make playoffs, actually, okay? So another big marquee matchup is CLG versus Team Liquid as well, which is on day 2. Very much so by day 2, we should pretty much know who's making playoffs by then. So let's start at the bottom with Dignitas and go up from there. Dignitas actually won another game against CLG. I'm gonna be completely honest here with you guys. I was watching the game and I just straight up fell asleep. I'm just being honest here. Like, I saw it was pretty back and forth. I just really don't care to watch Dignitas anymore. Let's just be honest here. Dignitas are going to pretty much revamp their entire roster anyway, going into the LCS 2023 summer split, given the fact that, you know, they're pretty much going to be finishing 10th place, right, at 2-13, and there's a good chance they lose out the rest of their games anyway this week, because they also have a hard strength of schedule as well. They play TSM, who are clearly better than them. They play Team Liquid, who are clearly better than them, even though Team Liquid are also bad as well. And they also play against Golden Guardians. 3 teams that are just better than them right now in every regard. The only good player on Dignitas right now is Jensen, and he's the only player that's actually doing anything for them, and I feel like that's just not going to be enough to get them any more wins. Actually, it was a surprise they even got the 2 wins that they did. Evil Geniuses had a chance in their game against Dignitas to actually just steal that game back for them and win it, but Jensen made that big play on Azir, and then against the CLG game, from the stuff that I did watch, Dignitas just clawed their way back with Aurelion Sol. So it was pretty much just their wins have came off the back of Jensen, and like I mentioned before, Tomo hasn't been that much better than Spawn. I think people were ragging into Dardoch for his take on Tomo, but I think people missed the general point of it. The general point of it is that, you know, an org like that could just scapegoat their weakest player and go, okay, that player was the problem. But when they brought in Tomo, they've only got like 2 wins, right? He's got 2 more wins than Spawn, right? But he's not been anywhere near the deciding factor to the reason why Dig has even won pretty much any game either. They're like, I would say that Tomo's a bit better than Spawn in like a few areas, but it's not been anything that substantially different, right? Because people forget Tomo was actually playing with Diamond, you know, in the NA Academy scene, right? And they had already had a good built-in synergy from those 2 players. So if you take Tomo and you put him with Ignar, that's also going to be a problem too. It's a problem where, like, you bring in a new player to work with other players pretty much mid-split, just throwing people into the deep end, and that just really doesn't work, honestly, my own personal opinion. It can sometimes work out really, really well if it just clicks, like the players just get each other, but, like, no one's really been ragging on Tomo as much, and I'm not advocating he gets ragged on. My thing is that he's not been any difference maker that much either. The only reason why he kind of got a spot was because Spawn was just playing that much worse that they just had to make a change, right? So yeah, that's my piece with Dignitas. We'll see how they perform for the final week of the LCS 2023 spring split. All right, let's go to Immortals. So like I mentioned before, this team is also extremely bad. You can make an argument that Immortals is worse than Dignitas, but Balulu, I think, coming in for this roster, I think having Balulu maybe, just maybe, would have given them a few more wins than they actually have right now, because I really do feel bad for him, because he's actually been playing pretty good, all things considered. You know, I'm not too familiar with the guy. I think I've probably heard of his name before, floating around when I've been watching League of Legends for all these years, right? But as of right now, I think Balulu looks pretty solid overall. Kind of reminds me of like Certis when he was on SK Gaming, not this year, but last year, when he was having pretty good performances, but the team around him is just obviously not that good. I really enjoyed his Vel'Koz gameplay. His Ahri gameplay was actually pretty good, but the thing here is he's on Immortals, and Tactical has been just a bottom-feeding ADC. You also have Fleshy, or who I like to call Full Ass, just being just so full ass. Like, he's so freaking bad. Like, oh, watching these 2 guys lane is just a just horrible, actually. It's so fucking bad. Then you also have Kenvi, and you guys know how much I've ragged on Kenvi. Kenvi actually had his only good game he's ever had in the LCS when he was playing on Viego this past weekend, right? And it's like, this guy has legitimately only had one good game his entire LCS, stint so far. One, and that was on Viego. And he still lost because he's just so lost on the map. He's so bad. It's pitiful to watch this guy. He doesn't have any idea what he even wants to do on the map with his players. He doesn't know where to path. He doesn't know how to path correctly. It's so bad watching this guy. It's literally, man, when anybody is hyping up Academy players to me coming up, there's going to be hyped Academy players probably going into like next year in the off season, and going into the next split actually, because people are going to want to make roster changes if you're like Immortals and Dig. Let's be honest here, going after these hype of Academy prospects is just not it. Like, it just goes to show you that Academy really is not the best level or meter of how to judge a really good player. I'm not saying that there isn't good players in Academy, like that's definitely not been the case, but these newer people that are coming up from Academy, honestly, outside of like a few players that I can name off the top of my head, have just been trash. They've been so bad. They're so disgustingly bad. Like, Kenvi is so disgustingly bad. It's horrible to look at. Like, it's like a guy who's like literally so scared of his own shadow on stage that he just does nothing, essentially, right? So, Revenge also isn't good. Like, I don't know where people get this idea that Revenge is somehow a good top laner. He's never been a good top laner. Lanes like shit, plays like shit, has always played this badly, right? People are being like, but he's a nice guy, dude. It's like, who cares? Like, yeah, I watched his stream once. He's probably a cool guy, but what does that really mean, though? Like, he's bad himself. This is a horrible team. There's literally nothing Balulu and Jensen can do, I would say, because people are like, yeah, get Revenge a team. Get Balulu and Jensen a team, right? Get those two players teams, because these teams are just not it. I just couldn't imagine a world where Immortals, doesn't make roster changes, and maybe these orgs are dealing with, smaller budgets than other orgs, and that's always been a defining factor into a lot of, League of Legends rosters, particularly when it comes to the LCS, is pretty much getting the bang for your buck. Some teams just have lesser budgets than others, not because they're like poor or anything, but it's more like, when you select budgets because the economy is the way it is, and sponsors, you have the less budgets, you have less to spend on certain players. It's like, what do you want to dedicate most of this budget to overall, right? So that's my piece with Immortals. They're just fucking awful, man. The fact that they were winning that TSM game and just couldn't even do basic shit properly is just goes to show you that sometimes scrim results can be true, right? Where people have said Immortals and Dig are bad in scrims. Well, their stage results directly reflect that, so that's for sure true. Alright, Team Liquid. Team Liquid, they won against FlyQuest. They had a match that if they didn't win that FlyQuest match, they were pretty much in no scenarios making playoffs, right? They got their upset win over FlyQuest, and Piosic actually had his one good game that he's had throughout the spring split as well. He popped off really hard on Lee Sin. Overall, and then the next day, they looked pretty bad against Cloud9. So Team Liquid, they played good and clutch against FlyQuest, and that was the Team Liquid that a lot of people thought they were actually going to be getting when the split started, right? It was that Team Liquid that you saw in that FlyQuest game, right? But the thing here is that's not been the Team Liquid that we've seen at all this split. Mostly, we've seen a team that gets early game leads, struggles to do anything with the lead, struggles in team fighting and map decisions and map awareness, right? So that's where Team Liquid has been. And watching Cloud9 destroy them was just amazing to see, because I love destroying the other teams in the league. Actually, because I'm a Cloud9 fan and I love my boys, right? But that's just how I see it right now. It really doesn't matter the scenarios. They're most likely not making playoffs. If they do make playoffs, I mean, congrats. But it's like, is anybody scared of facing Team Liquid in playoffs? Probably not. You know, that's just how I personally see it. I think Summit has been doing pretty good, you know, playing tanks, but the team just can't really even play basic front-to-back team fighting very well, you know? I mean, it's one of these things where, what are they really going to be doing? If Team Liquid don't, you know, make playoffs after week 8, after we start Super Week tomorrow, what is Team Liquid really going to do? You know, what do they really change in their roster, right? That's just what I see from them right now. TSM, they brought back in Wild Turtle last week, and the results with Wild Turtle have been actually pretty interesting, to say the least. TSM is actually, they're 2-2, I think, in their last 4 games, actually, because they beat IMT, and they lost to Golden Guardians, but they beat Team Liquid, and they lost against Evil Geniuses, right? So, like, they're 2-2 in their last games, obviously, with Wild Turtle. They had to switch out Neo. Like, Neo was playing pretty bad, actually. Like, Neo was playing ADC as if, like, he didn't really understand how positioning works. He wasn't dishing out any real decent worthy amounts of damage, even if he was ahead, actually. You know, remember, Neo was Asta on Optic Gaming at one point. Back to the Challenger, back to the Academy, got a chance to play with Aframu for a bit. Looked pretty good when he was playing with Aframu, but like I mentioned before, when you're playing with certain players, other certain players can make another player look good, and it looks like that was the case, you know, with Neo, actually, is that he looked good with Aframu, but when he went to obviously play with other supports, he did not look as good, and it was actually a good thing that TSM swapped out Neo for Wild Turtle. I thought, personally, Wild Turtle could have made, you know, orgs like Immortals and Dignitas better. What's crazy is that Wild Turtle was just on Immortals last year and still really couldn't get anything going. Also because that Immortals roster last year was just compiled of just veterans who pretty much already had a solidified way of how they wanted to play the game, and you're really not going to get that much wiggle room there. TSM, to me, seems like to be, I don't know, it's hard to say if they're the best team out of these 3, because this is the other competition they have, which is CLG and 100 Thieves, right? TSM and CLG went 1-1 on this split for El Asico, but, you know, my thing is, I think TSM and Cloud9 is the better rivalry anyway, but that hasn't been anything prominent for a bit right now. I think Solo's been a nice, okay, weak side top laner. He's not had like that many carry games, but he's been okay, right? Boogie's been in positions where he's won them games, but also lost them games. I think Maple has actually been one of the best mid laners of the split. No cap. I actually think he's been a top 4 mid in the LCS. I think he's had some amazing games that people that just don't really give him enough credit for. And Chime has looked pretty okay. He's looked fine. Relatively. He's not like anything stand out, but he's fine overall. So yeah, if TSM can get just a few wins on their scoreboard, if they beat 100 Thieves on Wednesday, that pretty much just secures them playoffs right there, actually. But they still need to hit that coveted 9 wins, actually, right? Alright, CLG. CLG played really bad this week. CLG's drafting was extremely bad. That not Golden Guardians game. It was the game they played against, was that second game? They played against EG. That game against EG was where they picked a comp where you have just one main consistent damage source, while they themselves ban out other consistent damage sources that they could have utilized for that kind of comp. And I was sitting there going like, okay, if you draft like that, just get off the stage. You know, they're just extremely bad at drafting, and drafting has always been a big hindrance of them. Like, if you take away certain key champions away from them, it does kind of feel like they don't really perform as well. And that could be said with any other team, realistically, but when it comes to, like, certain teams, you know if they're not on those specific champions that we've seen them win games through, it's just not going to be that good. Like, if you're gonna play a Kalista comp like that, and you're gonna have the one damage source, then you yourself need Tristana. You yourself would need Caitlyn. They banned out certain Now, I get it with, like, drafting phase, you're gonna want to take away a champion that you think your opponent might just blind, right? So, when they banned away Caitlyn, you're thinking, like, okay, they'll just take, like, Jinx, they'll take Zeri here. No, they chose to take Kalista for the early game presence, Kalista has, and yeah, Kalista is strong early on, but Kalista is not going to give you that good damage that you're looking for in that comp as the game goes on, and it's just not going to be something that you can actually bank on. And their bot lane lost lane anyway, so your biggest win con is just going to be negated, right? Okay, so I hope CLG figures out, okay, what is the best style this team needs to play. And it's fine to play different, like, drafting styles and to draft differently in the regular season, but the thing here is, if you're drafting yourself such a small window of execution, it's really not going to matter, actually. Alright, let's go to 100 Thieves. So 100 Thieves bounced back this week, which was really good for them. I need to point out how pivotal this was for 100 Thieves. If they actually lost this week's games, they would have pretty much been out of playoffs contention almost entirely, right? Now, 100 Thieves announced that they were swapping out their head coach Case for Nuke Duck, and then promoting up the academy guy to be the assistant head coach of Nuke Duck. Now, this is one thing I want to point out. We really don't know all that much about what coaches exactly do in League of Legends, right? Now we have seen coaches in voice comms say certain things and do certain things when you have the docuseries videos, right? But the thing here with this situation is, I really don't know if it was exactly Nuke Duck that fixed all their issues, because the thing here is, it's the same situation that I brought up with the whole Dignitas situation, which is, yeah, you kind of scapegoat your worst player, but the person you bring in, is that person actually going to magically fix everything? Now, the difference with the situation is you're bringing in a player versus swapping out a new coach. Now, what was the mentality behind the Nuke Duck switch? Which is pretty much basically, maybe the coach and the players did not get on the same page, which happens, right? It's going to happen where, there's going to be some teams where the players and the coaches just don't see eye to eye on the game, and it just doesn't work out. Now, I don't know how much difference Nuke Duck actually made them, because 100 Thieves in like their last 8 or 7 games was like 2 and something. They've only really won very few games in like a lot of their last previous games, right? So I think this is exactly what happened. I think this is what maybe have happened. I'll say that. They had a heart-to-heart conversation with each other. Nuke Duck was there. He was able to get them to understand each other's points about what they needed in the game and what they actually needed to do. And then they came and played the games, and it looked better from them. Because I feel like when some teams have that heart-to-heart, like we've heard about these kind of conversations before, they play a bit better, right? Heard that with Golden Guardians, heard that with many other teams, actually. I think they sat down with each other and went, okay, this is what we need to do to win these games. Because Closer popped off really hard this week, right? And they had this style where they were just kind of just playing through double lift, right? And we knew that that was going to be a style for them, which is playing through double lift, right? But they need another style that they can fall back on if playing through double lift doesn't work. Because with the 100 Thieves, there was a lot of issues this team had. And, yeah, they got the 2 wins this week. They managed to defeat, Golden Guardians. And they also managed to defeat Dignitas. There was no world that we were going to lose to Dignitas, right? I just don't think that was ever going to be a realistic possibility. The 100 Thieves game showed that if you give... The 100 Thieves Golden Guardians game showed that if you give Closer Lee Sin, he's still going to be a top-performing jungler on that pick. I know people said that he inted on Lee Sin the previous week, but it doesn't matter. Honestly, like, one int Lee Sin game out of all the other great Lee Sin games he's ever played, it's like whatever at the end of the day, right? I don't think Doublelift in particular played very well this week. I mean, he was losing lane to Stixay and Huhi. Like, keep that in mind. Golden Guardians were winning through the bot lane. 100 Thieves won through Closer, Bjergsen, and Tenacity, actually. My thing with Busio still is, I don't think he's looked impressive on any games. Yeah, he did decently well on the Rakan engages against Golden Guardians, but outside of that, it's just been kind of meh from the guy. Like, yeah, he's in the right positions, but that's because he's only really following double lift for the most part, right? So that's my thing with this team is, I need to see this team do very well in week 8 for me to really be, like, not like sold on the team, but it's more like, okay, this wasn't just like one of those fluke weeks where you just had a somewhat easy schedule and you performed better than expected. You did swap a coach out, but how much of that was really the coach's impact versus the players, obviously just popping off? We'll never really get to know that, but I think I don't really know the impact of what Nuke Duck did for them. Now, if Nuke Duck did do very good things for them and was able to kind of get them to get on the same page, that's a very good thing, right? But the thing here is, I'm not going to know what Nuke Duck did for them, right? So, it's one of these things where I can't, quantify that, but I can see with my own eyes that Closer played very well for them. And yeah, you're most likely just going to be sticking tenacity on, just tank duty. Actually, it's going to be on Sion, Gragas, Orin, because if he's on any carry champions, are we really going to be dedicating resources to tenacity, or will you just dedicate those resources to someone, Doublelift actually in the bot lane, right? Bjergsen looks like a player who, if he's playing Azir or if he's playing Talia, because last year he played Swain very well, or Swain if that ever comes back in. He looks like he definitely plays the game, right? But if he's not playing Talia, and if he's not playing Azir, he just looks pretty average. Or he just looks pretty meh, right? So that's my thing, is if teams take away Talia and Azir from him, is he just going to look like the same old Bjergsen that we've seen this past split? Well, we'll have to see that coming into tomorrow against TSM, okay? Alright, Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians, they started out really hot, and they pretty much have now secured playoffs through starting out as hot as they did, right? I think Gory had a uncharacteristically bad few games from them. I think the issue with the communication around this team is kind of what who he said, they just weren't on the same page. And you can kind of tell that in their games where, even against the 100 Thieves game, Gory is, trading into Bjergsen. But the problem here is he's trading in just at bad times and getting chunked out. And then when Closer goes for a gank, then he just obviously, gets ganked and just loses all the map pressure, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, right now with Golden Guardians is Licorice is still their weakest link. Gory and River, I think still are a very good 2v2 jungle, right? I think they're still really good. I think Gory had a bad week of gameplay. Now, if Gory has a bad week of gameplay coming into the Super Week, I think that is pause for concern. Because this guy looked like one of the best mid laners in the LCS, and looking at how he was versus what this week was this kind of just an off week from Gory. I hope it's an off week from Gory. I hope it was, okay? Then you also have Stix and Huhi, and yeah, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Stix and Huhi have been a pretty solid bot lane overall. Stix has pretty much, I would say, not fully bounced back to a good, decent form, but has been a consistent point of damage for Golden Guardians. Yeah, he still has positioning errors and still messes up various things, but he's looking pretty solid overall. And I think this is a lane that you can play through if you do manage to dedicate resources to it with dives, or we've seen Stix and Huhi win 2v2s as well. Alright, going to Evil Geniuses. So Evil Geniuses lost to Cloud9. Now this was the thing that happened with Evil Geniuses, is that what really hurt them in narratives is that they gave Jojo Pion, they let him sit out the second game because he was really, really sick against CLG, and they played Ryoma, which I'll get to in a moment. But it's just people were started ragging on them on Twitter going, well, you gave Jojo Pion the thing off and you didn't give fucking, Danny off, and yeah, that did not look good for them. Giving Jojo Pion, the game off when he's sick, but not giving potentially Danny the time off when he was going through his mental issues, that did not look good for them. Now, I understand the situations are a bit different, but for the public image EG has right now with the fans, that is something that definitely did not help them. But outside of narrative talk, right? Overall for this week, I think you could tell Jojo Pion was running it, because the thing here is that Jojo Pion was playing Yone against a Menace who played Tryndamere, right? Now, I'm not the biggest Tryndamere player. I've only played Tryndamere a few times. I played him on stream, right, for my main channel when I'm playing League of Legends. But I actually really enjoyed Tryndamere now that I played him another time. He's really, really fun. Tryndamere against Yone is a perfect counter because Tryndamere is not going to... Tryndamere can pretty much sustain himself in lane, you know, with Yone, actually. And the thing here is, if Yone ults, Tryndamere just pops his ult, okay? They can both pretty much trade evenly. And if Yone out extends himself into lane, Tryndamere can definitely punish that with his W slow, right? Then we saw that Amenas got the solo kill onto Jojo Pion. Then we also had the rest of the game just going to shit because of that. There was a problem with the Cloud9 game that I'll get to later on, where it was pretty much I don't know if they were trolling to close or whatever, but my thing with Evil Geniuses is they have a really good bot lane in FBI and Vulcan, but it does kind of feel like they do mess up some of the 2v2s, like, not badly, but they're not as polished on certain 2v2 picks like other ones. Like, if they're playing Lucian Nami, they look really good. If they play, like, Zeri Lulu, they look really good. If they play Zeri X Champion, they look really good. Caitlyn Lux, really good. You saw that when they were playing Aphelios and Thresh, it was like, ooh, they're not as polished on this, right? But I still think Inspired is one of the best junglers in the league. I think, and putting Inspired on Elise is not bad, but it's just going to be where if your Yone gets behind, there's really nothing Elise can do. Elise is all pretty much just a ganking jungler, and if she can't gank the best priority lane, which is mid, which is with the Yone of all champions, yeah, it's not going to look as good. They did put in Ryoma, and I'll say this before, Ryoma's dog shit, will always be dog shit. He can only really play 2 champions well, you know. Evil Geniuses are never starting Ryoma next year. It'll never happen. Ryoma's never getting a spot again. I mean, if anybody's watched this league as long as I have, you know how dog shit Ryoma is. Yeah, he had one good game. Cool, that's great. Everybody can have that one good game every once in a while, right? Doesn't matter. But they played good against CLG, and that got them that for sure 10th win that they needed. So Evil Geniuses, Cloud9, and FlyQuest pretty much secured playoffs right now. FlyQuest, they actually ended up losing to Team Liquid, and there's been some issues you've seen with FlyQuest, right? Vikla has not been as dominant as he was in the round robin, well, the first round robin we had for the spring split, right? He seems to have gotten, I wouldn't say complacent, because he's still actually pretty good. The issue here is you can tell he's not as polished as he was in the first round robin. In the first round robin, he was insane, right? Then the second round robin, he's kind of started to falter a little bit, and I hope this faltering doesn't happen consistently to the point where, you know, it's going to be, okay, now he's going to be, like, kind of bad. I think he needs to go back and redefine what made him actually pretty good and get back to that form. If Vikla can get back to that first round robin form he was in for the LCS 2023 spring split, the FlyQuest was still going to be a pretty strong team. Don't get me wrong, this is still going to be an incredibly strong team, right? But their early game needs some work. Their early game is bad, actually. I thought, like I said before, it was non-existent to begin with, but it's pretty bad. They need to actually shore up on their early game. Prince was making some uncharacteristically bad mistakes too, so I don't know right now if they're going through team communication problems, because remember, they are playing with Ayla over Winsome. Now, I know they already dedicated, you know, that starting spot to Ayla, right? But they had already did so much time with Winsome. I would have personally just kept playing with Winsome, and then if you wanted to play Ayla coming up within the next split, I think that would have been more fair to Ayla, because you would have given him time to actually build that synergy up with Prince. Just throwing him in there with Prince really wasn't going to actually work, you know, the way that they thought. I would have just played Winsome and just tell Ayla, hey, you are going to play in summer, for sure you will be the starter, but right now we already have the good synergy thing going with Prince. So, but I guess they were concerned around the optics of it. Maybe they had already told Winsome, hey, you're just going to play until Ayla gets in. And right now we can see that Ayla and Prince are having some issues in the 2v2. Prince is still really good, but Ayla is definitely just almost running it on stage right now. All right, so the last team to talk about is my boys Cloud9 on that 5-game winning streak. Dropping in a Menace has been a good addition for them. Like, they had ended up losing to Golden Guardians all the way back in, what was it, week 4, I think? They dropped in a Menace, actually, and they dropped in a Menace. Oh, sorry, they dropped a Menace in week 5. So ever since a Menace came in, after they lost to Golden Guardians, they have literally won 5 straight, right? Out of their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they've won literally pretty much out of their last 6 games, they won 5 of them. That's actually incredible. He's looked insane in a lot of these games too. Now, the only thing I was concerned with was, oh, it's an academy. I know he's not an academy NA player, but it's this thing of like, okay, he has these 26 solo kills in academy. He's dominating academy. We know this guy has been good in the other scenes he's been in. Will this translate to stage? It's always my biggest problem. Now, could that be because he's around the players to allow that to happen? Yes, sure. Being around players like Fudge and Blabber, Zen and Berserker, obviously is going to allow that to happen better. Whereas, like, if he was transitioning into a team like Team Liquid, would this really transition as well? I don't know. Fuck it. You know, I wouldn't know that, right? But him replacing Diplex has been even better. I'm not saying Diplex was bad. He played pretty good. He played okay. But a Menace has been definitely that difference maker in Cloud9. I think Blabber still had a questionable split. If you look back at a lot of the games. But Fudge has played well pretty much the entire split. Zen has had some questionable games too, but nothing like super bad or abhorrent, right? Berserker has been one of the best ADCs in the league. They have a well-rounded machine going on right now with Cloud9. It's all been something nice to see. You know, I did not expect them to be first place. You know, for my power rankings, for the LCS 2023 Spring Split for the preseason, I had them at second place. It was crazy watching people going, oh, they're not going to be second or first. They're going to be like fifth. Fifth? They're going to be fifth? Are you sure Cloud9 is going to be fifth with that roster? Oh, okay. I mean, it's whatever. I don't really care, honestly. It's preseason power rankings. They mean nothing at the end of the day. But I think Cloud9 have not only overperformed to what people thought the roster could do, but also still showed that this is still going to be an org where you could slot a player in, and given the coaching staff and the systems and the situations around them, it's going to allow that to happen a lot better. Amenas looked really bad in that Golden Guardians game because he's just not a good Victor player. If you watch the Academy games, he's not a good Victor player, right? But if you give him picks he's good at, he's just going to start popping off, right? And he's been, honestly, has he been one of the best mid laners in the split? It's hard to judge that because he came in week 5, but looking at the games that he has played, yeah, he's played pretty well, actually. And Berserker has still been a constant threat for Cloud9 as well. So it's hard to see, like, will Cloud9 win this split? I would love that. I love when my teams can stack the trophies, right? But, you know, that's still a little far away. They're the best team right now in the LCS with FlyQuest, and that battle for first place is really significant coming up this week because FlyQuest face Cloud9 in the opening game. Whoever wins this secures first place, so no matter how the rest of the week plays out, whatever happens in this game, whoever wins it gets first place. Now, they could also lose first place, give or take that they might lose or win their next couple of games. So let's say, even if Cloud9 wins against FlyQuest and they go to 13-3, right? If Cloud9 lose the rest of their games, there's a good possibility that FlyQuest even outpaces them in the standings because they win the rest of their games, right? Cloud9 face FlyQuest, Cloud9 face Immortals, and Cloud9 also face CLG. So Cloud9, realistically, if they go, you know, and they finish 3-0, they'll finish 15-3. That'll be one of their highest regular season standings ever, because some of their best regular season standings ever was what? Going 17-1, going 14-4 in multiple splits, you know, going 17-1, you know, what that Cloud9 2020 spring split roster with Niski, right? So yeah, if they go 3-0 this week, that's great for them. Looking like one of the best teams heading into playoffs. If FlyQuest go 3-0, that's going to look good for them as one of the best teams going into playoffs as well. So yeah, that pretty much, I'm done with my recap of the LCS 2023 Spring Split Week 7. I will be doing my LEC 2023 Spring Split Week 1 recap. I have to finish watching the rest of the games. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of content. I know it's a bit longer, but I do like to be very thorough with when I'm explaining League of Legends to people, because League of Legends is a very complicated game, and it's a game where if you don't explain yourself on a lot of things, people just won't understand you. So if I'm going over concepts and how to play the game, it's also good for new people as well. So yes, if you enjoy this kind of content, like this video, comment down below, ring the notification bell. That way you can be notified on whenever I upload a video or go live on the show. Remember guys, the Cloud9 podcast is streamed on YouTube, on YouTube and Twitch. Follow the Twitch account to watch the Cloud9 podcast live at twitch.tv/C9MasterSwagKing. We have episodes on Sunday and Wednesday. Sundays is LCS, Wednesdays is LEC. And I'd love to have you guys come by and say hi. So I'll see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Esports Content Entertainment, your one place for esports content. All right, see you guys later. Deuces. Peace. #C9win. And let's get that 3-0, baby. Let's go. 15-3.